Good morning and welcome back to BIFA TV, your daily dose of industry information. China's revised Maritime Code came into effect on the 1st of May and could have important implications for forwarders. To tell us more, we're joined by Robert Windsor from our policy and compliance team. So Robert, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
That's fine.
Now, what would you say are the main points that our members need to be aware of?
Chinese law is complex, and this was enacted last year and it's come into force. I think the important thing to remember is, in many ways, this change reflects what has been happening on the ground in commercial reality. And we'll look very briefly at a couple of the points which are particularly important. And I do feel, and I did intimate in the article, that there are certain things we don't know yet.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of area we want to do. I mean, certainly make sure that you're aware that there's changes. Read the BIFA link article. I've spoken to some members and I've seen correspondence between them and their Chinese office, and that's got a slightly different take on what an English solicitor would advise.
Of course.
So it's a little bit of a confusing thing, but the important thing is we've given a good summary, and we'll just look at some more guidance on what members should do, taking that guidance forward.
Of course. And you mentioned your article in June's issue of BIFA Link.
Yes.
In summary, what would you say the key points are?
Well, I think the main thing to think about, a BIFA member can either act as an agent in a contract on behalf of the shipper, or they can act as a non-vessel operator. And that's where this piece of legislation, I think, really catches you.
Right, okay.
Because there is a way you can actually phrase your booking, and it's actually in this article, so that you state quite clearly you're agent on behalf of, and therefore you'll probably be out of scope of this.
Right.
If you issue a house bill, you become a non-vessel operator. In effect, you are a contracting carrier. This legislative change actually makes it very clear that you are within scope and you will be regarded as carrier. So I think we have to be aware of that.
Of course.
I mean, what else do you have to think about? Shipping line contracts traditionally have been what is called tackle to tackle. Now it's much more from taking receipt of the goods to final delivery. Now, that's an interesting one because obviously a freight forwarder will take receipt of goods earlier than a shipping line would and deliver later. So those are the sorts of things that people have got to do. I think the other thing that's quite interesting, and commercially you would often get this change of giving a statutory right to the party that you've contracted with to request a change to the journey. The reality is, if the thing's on the vessel, there's nothing you can do until it gets there. But some of the things we talk about are key rent and demurrage, and we've done articles about this on BIFA TV. And I think actually this becomes quite interesting because actually it defines, this legislation actually now defines who is responsible for that. And basically if somebody doesn't take delivery, then it reverts to shipper. Now, if the freight forwarder has shown themselves as shipper on the master bill as a consolidator, as an NVO, then they are the party very much in the firing line.
Right, okay.
But once again, in a way, the change does not change anything, because in a merchant clause in a shipping line bill of lading, they would be responsible at all.
So on this point, what action should our members be taking?
You know, as I say, a lot of this only addresses what's happening in reality. If you have a dispute of a shipment going to China, it's arrived in China, the Chinese courts are going to take jurisdiction.
Yeah.
They're doing that now. So this doesn't change that. I think you want to look at very carefully, look at your processes and your documents. Be clearer in your own mind. Are you acting as agent or are you acting as an NVO? And I think the big problem comes on the back-to-backs, where it's only one house bill, and you've got to be slightly more careful about that, because a lot of people don't realise that they are acting as a consolidator if they issue a back-to-back.
Right.
I would actually also make sure you liaised with your counterparts in China to see what their view is. And then thinking about it carefully, in the UK, it's probably going to be worthwhile talking to a solicitor to see their view on it.
Yeah.
I do feel that you ought to speak to your insurers as well, particularly, well, especially if you're acting as an NVO and you're issuing your own house bills, to make sure your freight forwarder liability cover will be sufficient for the changes in China's definition of how compensation will be based. It's already different to what you actually see on the back of a bill. The point is, if it goes to court, you're going to definitely need the higher things. And I can see a situation, particularly with high value cargo, of this being tested. And the view of solicitors and insurers is, unfortunately, until we've actually got some case law on it, it's going to be very, very difficult to give totally accurate information.
Of course. Well, that's great, Robert. Thank you so much for the update on this.
Okay, it's my pleasure.
As Robert mentioned, there is a full article on this topic in the June issue of BIFA Link, which is available now. We'll leave a link to that in the description below. That's all for today's edition of BIFA TV, your daily dose of industry information.